All right. So hello. Good evening, everyone. Good morning if you're watching this later, or good afternoon. Very happy to have you all for the last session. So, if you stayed here for the 6 sessions, congratulations, because it was more than 14 weeks, I guess, or 13 weeks. So yeah, glad to have you guys. Today is the last one, but I promise it is going to be a good one. I put a lot of effort into this presentation, and I'm pretty sure both of these wines are going to be great. So the order for the tasting is going to be Crozes Hermitage first, and Torbreck Shiraz from Australia second. So if you're sipping the wine, start with the French one, okay? All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and share the presentation so we can get started. And I see new people coming in, so yes, welcome everyone. I'm just getting started. All right, and so sessions. Well, you know about me. I don't have to introduce myself anymore. My name is Alessandra Esteves. Pleasure to be here with you guys. So session 6, we have Syrah versus Shiraz. So just a quick question, 2 different grapes or same grape, different names? What do you guys think? Yep, same grape, exactly. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good, guys. Same grape, exactly. It's just 2 different ways of writing, but also 2 different styles. And we'll talk about that today, okay? So today we are going to recap as we do, and then we're going to get dirty, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about, how to make Syrah, Shiraz. And of course, we are going to talk about the Rhone Valley and the climate, the soils, the style of the wine, and Barossa, also the climate, and what a classic style Barossa Valley Shiraz is as well, okay? So Barossa Valley is the new world that is pretty old. So yeah, I think we'll have an interesting discussion in here. All right, so yes, during this 5 webinars, we looked into terroir. What is terroir? We looked at blending both in the vineyard and in the winery. And then we talk about, the old world style, very savory wines, usually super dry with a high acidity and low alcohol. And then the new world style, right? Everything that is not European. So very plush and soft wines with a more moderate, soft acidity and higher alcohol. So 2 different styles. And I think, today we are going to see that this is still applicable for Syrah. But there are other things kind of modifying the terroir, okay? All right, very good. And let's start with Syrah, Shiraz. So major plantings for Syrah, France. Okay, so it was really in France that the grape was born. So France with 60,000 hectares. Australia is the second largest one. And then Spain. Nobody thinks about Spain and Syrah, but actually it is pretty large plantings, right? Italy, Argentina, and then there is also in Chile, South Africa, Portugal, especially in the Alentejo area of Portugal, that is more, modern, and they use some international varieties. But the focus in here is really France and Australia for the main regions, okay? And very important when we talk about Syrah, Shiraz, to talk about soils and to talk about what's happening in the vineyard, okay? So let's get dirty in here. So first of all, soils in Barossa, they are rich soils, clay, loam, some sandy soils, which is totally different than the Rhone, because the Rhone Valley is granite soil. So it is very stony soil, granite, okay? Now, one thing that is really important in here when we talk about Barossa is the old vines. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Barossa is a phylloxera-free zone, okay? So have you heard about phylloxera before? Yeah, exactly. So yes, most of you have heard about phylloxera. So phylloxera is an aphid. It is a plague that infested European vineyards at the end of the in the 1850s and destroyed virtually 2/3 of all vines. So it's native to the US or to the Americas. So American plants had no problem with it. But as international commerce of plants started to grow, of course, phylloxera was brought to Europe and devastated all the vineyards. There's no cure for phylloxera. What you have to do is grafting. So using American rootstocks and then using the European plant on top of it. Okay, so that is called grafting. But there is some places in the world that were never hit by phylloxera. Chile is a great example just because of the isolation. It is far away. You have a desert, you have the Andes Mountains, you have the ocean, and Barossa is another one. So Barossa is a phylloxera-free zone, and they have very strict quarantine restrictions. And when I talk about quarantine, so first of all, it's machinery, right? So think about that. If you are in Sonoma and you're a small winery, you don't have a bottling line, but you call a mobile bottling line. These guys go to Napa, they go to Oregon, they go to Southern California, to Paso Robles. So in the case of Barossa, you cannot have these people, going to all these vineyards and then entering Barossa. So all the equipment, if you want to do, machine harvest, if you want to do machine pruning, even tools that you work in the vineyards, everything has to be only used within Barossa. So that is how strict the quarantine is. And then, the same with people, right? If you go to these areas, you have to, your boots, you have to pass through a solution. So to make sure you're not carrying any phylloxera in there. So it is pretty strict quarantine, and, they have a reason for that. So phylloxera is still alive and still around the vineyards. There is some in California. There is some even in Australia in a region called Yarra Valley. So they do that because of the very old vines, okay, that they have. They are not grafted, do not have American rootstocks. So you need to have this very strict control, okay? In the northern Rhone, yes, because it was hit by phylloxera, you do not have a large quantity of old vines. And of course, the vines are grafted. So two very different things in here, okay? So Carr asks, how many hectares are planted in the US for Syrah? Very good question. I do not know the answer. I can check later. And it's funny that he didn't mention on the book, because the US is pretty important. If we talk about Paso Robles, if we talk about Washington State, and even, some other parts of California, there is a lot of Syrah planted. So yeah, very good question. I'm gonna check and let you know, okay? Okay, and so let's talk about old vines in here, because this is really important for Barossa and for Shiraz. So when you hear about old vines, most of the countries, there is no regulation for it, okay? So sometimes what you have is people using old vines on the label, just like they use reserve in the New World, which there is no meaning. How old are your vines? Are they 20 years old or 100 years old, right? But in Barossa, they have, this very strict rules and regulations to see, you know, how old is these vines. So they considered old vines only when the vine reaches 35 or more years old, okay? And then they have the survivor wines, then they have the centenarian vines, and they have the ancestor vines. So, which is, you know, 125 plus years old. And they are very proud of having that. And if you go into, you know, the Barossa wine website, they list the vineyards. So if you want to know which producer has an ancestor vine, it is in there for you to see. So it is pretty cool because, you know, they keep this because yes, this is, you know, history, right? And the mistake about old vines is, you know, does old vines really produce better wines? Well, up to a point, yes. You know, like I wrote in here, the old vines, they have a really well-developed root system. And so, you know, they suffer less with vintage variation, they suffer less with drought, or, you know, with too much rain, because of this really well-developed root system. And of course, they are lower yieldings, right? So they cannot give a lot of fruit, and the fruit that they're giving, it is very concentration. Also fewer foliage and shoots and everything. So the green parts of the vine are fewer. So that means the plant is not doing a lot of photosynthesis, and, you know, and also wasting resources to get to you know, make everything grow. And so what winemakers say is that wines made from old vines are more balanced and more concentrated. So, you know, but when we talk about concentration in here, it's not the high alcohol, it's not 14.5, 15% alcohol. What they mean is really more fruit on the palate. So should be, you know, theoretically better. Now, very important to say that if you know the story about the California, the Paris judgment, judgment of Paris in the 1970s, all of these were very, very young vines. And they did amazing wines too. So, you know, they say between 7 and 10 years, also the vines can give pretty good fruit. And in the case of California, you know, the climate was there to also to help. So yes, old vines is a different characteristics. It's very, very hard to keep old vines, okay? And let me go back into the slide. So this is an example from an old vine in Barossa. And I took the image from australianwine.com. So first of all, you see, you know, the size of the vine, it's huge. So there's no way to mechanize. You have to do everything by hand, which, you know, in some areas of the world is okay. But in Australia, where they have a pretty low population, it is kind of difficult. So you're managing and you're doing everything by hand. And then instead of having, you know, a young, healthy vine with 10, 20 bunches, in here, you're going to have fewer bunches. You know, the bunches will be smaller, but then, you know, with very concentrated fruit. It's very hard to take care of old vines. There is a lot of diseases that old vines have. So you have to prune, you have to, you know, retrain the vine and so on. So it is not an easy thing. And a lot of places in the world, the government gives money to these winemakers, so they do not, you know, simply remove the vines and plant new ones, because that is the easiest solution. But, you know, when you're dealing with ancestor wines or vines or all of this, you want to keep them because of the historical characteristic as well. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, pretty cool, you know, to drink first wines from plants that, you know, are not do not have American rootstocks, and then, you know, from very old vines like this. So I can share the list with you guys later, okay? All right, and to talk a little bit about viticulture and winemaking for Syrah. So of course, because it is a red grape that has, you know, plenty of color, plenty of tannins, you need to have it in moderate to warm climates. So cool climates will be too harsh for Syrah. So you want to really have, you know, moderate climates just like the Rhone, or warm climates just like Australia, okay? There is a lot of talking about whole cluster versus destemmed fruit. So just like the things that we discussed for Pinot Noir, you know, can be applicable in here. So people were adding some whole cluster, you know, for the floral notes or for the tannins, but please remember that it has to be ripe, right? Otherwise, you're using those stems that are going to bring green flavor. And of course, the stem fruit is the easy one if you do not need to add any tannins or anything. Syrah can be and is in a few places co-fermented with Viognier. So have you heard about this before? Have you tried a Côte Rôtie, for instance, or any of the wines that co-fermenting? Yeah, Karen says yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is actually super delicious. And Cheryl says, yeah, she really likes the co-fermentation with Viognier. Viognier is a white grape, but it's super floral. So, you know, it adds that floral note into the wine. And, you know, there is some winemakers that say that the co-fermentation actually helps fixing the color in Syrah. So there's another reason for it, but yes, it gives, you know, floral note and kind of a lifted note to the Syrah, okay, making it more complex. Then in the southern France, southern Rhone, and in the Languedoc-Roussillon, it is blended with Grenache, Mourvèdre, and other red grapes, and also blended with Marsanne and Roussanne in the case of Hermitage. So, you know, there's a lot of possibilities. In Australia, blended with Cabernet Sauvignon. In the US, blended with, you know, also Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. So yes, a little bit of everything. And Cheryl that says that she's a big fan of GSMs. So Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. And I agree, they are really, really good and really delicious. So yeah. For Syrah, fermentation temperature is really important because you want to ferment it at hot so you can extract a lot of color, a lot of tannins, and you know, make a big, powerful, structured wine. Okay. Large oak vats are still very much used in the Rhone Valley, and of course, if you're talking about the New World, probably stainless steel tanks in Australia, just because it makes easier for cleaning. And then Syrah does really well with oak, has affinity for oak aging. So winemakers will use both French and American oak barrels. Really interesting that, of course, if you're talking about the Rhone Valley, you're using French oak. But in Australia and in Barossa, there is a lot of American oak used with Shiraz, okay? So to tell you a little bit of the difference between French barrels and American oak barrels. So first, you know, it is two different types of trees from the oak family. The French has a tighter grain. It is more expensive and gives, you know, aromas and flavors of spices and some smoke and toast and some French vanilla. Whereas the American give aroma more like coconut, creme brulee, caramel. So in the case of Australian Shiraz, because it has so much fruit, it can take it. Okay, so we can take the American oak, and then you have, you know, these coconuts, together with the rich flavors of Shiraz. So the wine we are tasting today, it is not American oak, it is French oak, but I highly recommend you to get one with American oak just to see, you know, how Shiraz can be so interesting when aged in American oak barrels too. Okay. All right. And I decided to put, you know, a little bit of flavors and aromas of Syrah for us to think about it and, you know, make us hungry as well. So depending on the climate, the aroma profile will change a little bit. So in a moderate climate like the Rhone Valley, so first thing you have is a lot of spices. And then, you know, a lot of black pepper. It is just like fresh pepper in front of you. And then bacon and bacon fat. You know, it doesn't sound good, but it's actually delicious and smells. So when I poured the Crozes Hermitage in my glass and I smell it, I said, okay, yay, bacon fat. That was the first thing that I smelled. Okay, now I can smell the fruits and everything. But yes, this bacon fat is very characteristic of Syrah. Other aromas in cool climates. So it is kind of this granite-like minerality. Okay, so stony granite, like a whetstone type of minerality. Plums as well. And some people say black olives for Syrah. I don't know. Maybe I can see in this wine like olive tapenade. So yes. Now, in a warm climate, you have, you know, Syrah can be very, very aromatic. So think about blueberry, plum, but you know, the blueberry is like blueberry pie. It is really aromatic. And then chocolate. The black pepper is still there, okay? But it has all these very fruit-forward type of aromas. And then, yes, chocolate. And then you have the aromas of oak, which will go on top of that. So smoke, toast, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, and so on. So it can be really complex. And then if you have a little bit of Viognier, and normally winemakers will use 2%, 3%, up to 5%, it just gives a hint of floral notes. So makes the wine very complex as well, okay? Yes, and Carr says, in what world is bacon fat not good? Exactly, right? so yeah, I agree. Bacon fat, you know, in the wine or in my dish is just the perfect combination. Yeah. All right, so for the regions, let's start with the Northern Rhone Valley, okay? And the region in here is called Crozes Hermitage. So there is Hermitage, which is a cru in the Northern Rhone, and the Crozes Hermitage area goes around it, okay? So only 1,600 hectares. It is not too much. So the Northern Rhone, it's really, you know, a tiny piece of land. We don't have huge vineyards in here. Climate is moderate, continental climate, okay? And to talk about the climate classification from Winkler, this is region 3. So until now, you know, all the white wines we tasted were region 1, and then we saw Bordeaux, and yes, we saw, you know, further reds, a little bit of regions 2 and 3. So yes, now the Rhone Valley is definitely a region 3. So you're getting warmer, you're getting more warm, so you can ripen Syrah. Granite soils, you know, some vineyards are on slopes as well, and around 700 millimeters of rain. So it rains a lot. So there's no, excuse me, no problems in here with drought or anything. And for the style for Northern Rhone, So very savory, spicy, with a stony mineral finish, okay? So of course, the wines have evolved and the vintages have changed a little bit. You know, we had a lot of warm vintages in the past years. So you get some fruit as well. But yes, always very dry with this very savory finish, okay? And we will compare this a little bit later. Now, for Barossa, so kind of a new world, but you know, very classic area, because the first grapes were planted here in the 1840s. So, you know, when Europe was just about getting to, you know, being hit by phylloxera, Australia was already planting the first grapes. So in the New World is definitely one of the oldest regions. And Barossa is very classic. Climate in here is Mediterranean, simply because the rain only comes in winter time, okay? So it is not because there is a Mediterranean Sea or anything, it is just because rain comes in winter time and then summers tend to be hot and dry. Winkler's climate region, this is region 4. So this is the warmest region we have tasted so far. So yeah, so it is pretty warm. That means that Shiraz can ripen a lot, okay? Soils in here, a mixture, but very rich soils. So clay, silt, loam, sands. And only 220 millimeters of rain per year. So irrigation is extremely necessary. So it is funny, you know, when you read about Barossa and you read about the other regions. So yes, you know, the regions you have the problem with frost, hail, pest, diseases. And in Barossa, you don't have any of that. The only problem of Barossa is drought. So yes, irrigation is extremely necessary, okay? Otherwise, yes, it is too dry. And the style of Barossa, it's rich, full body wines. Most of the wines reach 15% alcohol naturally, okay? So I don't know about this one. Ooh, yes, 15% alcohol. So yes, let's see how this one will taste. But yes, think about that. It is a Mediterranean climate. It is a warm climate. You don't have a lot of rain, you know, so those berries are not filled with water. They're not diluted. They're really rich and concentrated. And that will translate into the wine, okay? All right, so yeah, if you don't have any questions, I'd love to start tasting those wines so we can compare and contrast and discuss a little bit of the style and winemaking for both, okay? So the tasting order will be Jean-Louis Chave Sélection Crozes Hermitage Silene 2019. And then we are going to go to Torbreck Woodcutters Barossa Valley Shiraz. So Jean-Louis Chave is a top winemaker or producer in the Rhone Valley. And, you know, Chave is really well known for the Hermitage and for the top wines. The selection of Chave is not their own vineyards, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, it is still the same winery. So the quality tends to be very, very good. Okay. So let's go and taste. 100% Syrah. So no Viognier, no Marsanne-Roussanne in here, no other grape. Okay. Fermentation happens in both stainless steel and wood tonneau, which are big, large oak barrels. And then the wine is later aged for 15 to 18 months in small French oak barrels, okay? So 1.5 years in small French oak barrels. Not new, but you know, still you have a little bit from the French oak. And the vineyard age in here, anything from 5 to 25 years old. So young vines, right? no old vines. So as any Syrah or Shiraz, it is very deep purple in color. So you can really, when you put your glass of wine into 45 degrees, you can see the rim, it is pretty purple. Yes, so Syrah has thick skins, and that will translate into a lot of color in your wine. Okay, what can you smell in this wine? I'm so happy right now. This smells so good. Yeah, I agree. So yes, there is plums. Yeah, more like prunes, so very concentrated, very ripe. And yes, Karen, I agree. There is blue fruit in here. There's black fruit. So normally it's not something that you would expect from a Syrah in a cool vintage, let's say. But yes, in this warm vintage, definitely the wine is very fruit forward on the nose. Okay. Okay, so what about the other things? So yeah, it is from a younger vintage as well. So exactly. So 2019 was a warm vintage, and yeah, this wine will last another few years. So things that I can smell in this wine. So think about the olive tapenade, kind of black olives. And then you can smell the oak, right? So you can smell, spices and kind of a smokiness coming from the wine as well. And I do smell the bacon fat. Maybe I'm just too hungry because it is, what time is it? 6:38 p.m. But I do smell the bacon fat. So, and I think it's beautiful. It's incredible. And the other thing, there is some floral notes as well. So think about violets, okay? So overall, a very complex wine. If we talk about, floral notes, then blue fruits, black fruits, spices, the oak aromas like smoke and toast, the the bacon fats, the olive. Yeah, so there is a lot in here. Yeah, so Carr says not super smoky bacon, closer to a smoked ham than bacon. Okay, we need to do a tasting of charcuterie and meats to just make sure, right? Which type of bacon is this one? Yeah, I know, I agree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but super complex on the nose. I'm already happy only by smelling this wine. So let's taste the wine to see, how's the acidity, how's the balance, how are the tannins, how's the wine is. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is so easy to drink, right? So one thing about Syrah is that even though it has, that amount of color, that amount of fruit, it doesn't have the high tannins of Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance. So yes, I was just about to say that, Carl. The tannins aren't too aggressive. They are actually really nice. And this is a wine that you can drink now because of that. So the tannins, are not as aggressive as you find in a Cabernet Sauvignon or maybe in a Nebbiolo, Barolo, or so on. Yeah. Okay. Now on the palate, so, in terms of flavors, I do have kind of this spicy, this black pepper character. And then on the finish, I do feel this granite like stony minerality. So let me know if you can feel that too, because that is in the very finish. Yeah, there is a lot of spices and dried cooked fruit. I agree. Yeah, and you know, the other thing is that the acidity is also not too high. It is kind of a more moderate acidity, you know, with so medium acidity, medium plus tannins, so makes it overall very easy to drink. I'm checking in here the price for this wine. We are sold out of this wine, unfortunately, because it is a good one. But I just wanted to give you an idea of pricing. So normally, Crow's Hermitage is around $25 to $35. You know, the Hermitage, so the Cru of Hermitage is more like $100 to a few $100. But I think Crow's Hermitage, if you know you have a good producer, is so well made and offer value. So yeah, this one was $35.99, which is great. Okay, yeah. So Deborah is saying that she has the Crow's Hermitage from Fleury 2018. So how is the wine tasting, Deborah? Can you feel almost the same things as we are smelling and tasting? So yeah, she says, you know, there is the spicy character as well, very smooth tannins. Yes, yeah, it's, you know, beautiful. Happy to hear. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, overall, I think I like this wine a lot too. And Deborah says that she likes her wine a lot as well. And I think it is a, you know, a great with ribs or, you know, burgers, or if you want to have cheeses. So you don't have to do too much. With Crow's Hermitage, it is ready to drink. You know, there is some oak, but nothing that it is in your face or needs further integration. So I'll say this wine is ready to drink, you know, but definitely will hold for another 3 to 5 years if you like it. And Carr is saying venison. Ooh, I like that. Okay. Now, bottle says 14.5% ABV. So I would say that this is so well balanced because I don't feel that high alcohol, right? 14.5 is a lot, but I think it is, you know, the fruit can take it. So yeah, definitely very balanced. Yeah. And William says best with food. Yes, I agree. But yeah, but a very good wine. Okay. All right, so now let's see the similarities and differences with the Barossa one. So Torbrack Woodcutters Shiraz 2019 is 100% Shiraz, and fermentation happens in stainless steel tanks. And then the wine is aged for 12 months in large used French oak barrels and vats. Okay, so they have hogshead and foudre, so they have both, so different sizes as well. Okay. So the information that I have about this wine is that it is hand harvested, everything is done by hand, and they say low yielding vines. So I try to you know, find information about how old were these vines. but this is the entry-level Shiraz of Terroir Winery, and they are blending grapes from different vineyards, their own vineyards, but they are just blending grapes. So I believe there is some old vines in here and some younger vines. That is why they do not say how much, but the higher ends from the winery are definitely have some older vine, okay? And Woodcutters, it has this name because the owner of the winery, or the founder, he lived in the UK for a while, and he was cutting wood in Terroir, apparently. So that is why there is this name. Okay, so you know, once you start seeing things in the wine industry about the cost of things. So I really like this bottle. So first you have the engraving, right? Which makes, you know, really beautiful bottle in here. And then the label is pretty nice as well. So, you know, just feel the paper of the Terroir so you can feel how it is a high-end paper. So nowadays I pay attention to all those things, okay? Let's taste the wine as well. I do pay attention to the aromas and flavors, but I do, you know, pay attention to the other ones. So screw cap, as many Australian wineries do, even for high-end wines, okay? This is not a sign of that the wine is cheap or anything. Nowadays with screw cap, we can also control the amount of oxygen that goes into wine. And they control that with the liner, okay? So that liner that you see at the end of the screw cap, they can control oxygen with that as well, okay? So let's see about this one, 100% Shiraz, and you know, still deep purple in color, right? I cannot read through it and I cannot see my fingers. So yes. So Carr is saying fresher, brighter fruits than the Crow's Hermitage. And I see what you mean, because, you know, normally we would expect the contrary, right? If I'm talking about a warm Mediterranean region with wrinkler climate, instead of, you know, a kind of moderate climate, you wouldn't expect that. But I see that, yes, the fruit is very fresh in this wine. Fresh plums, fresh strawberries, yes, fresh blackberries, some cherries as well. Okay, what about spices, pepper, you know, olives, anything like that in this wine? Yeah, I agree. So yes, Carr is saying thyme. So I agree there is some herbal in here, character. So yes, just like fresh green herbs. So thyme, rosemary. And yes, Deborah says pepper, and I totally agree. There is pepper in here as well. Yeah. Okay, smells good. So let's taste the wine. Yeah, it is spicy on the palate. And pardon my dog, apparently there is, you know, somebody walking a dog, so she's excited. Yeah, so Carr saying more white pepper than black. I can see that. It's funny because, you know, the nose, it's so fruit forward, so fruity. And then on the palate, the wine is savory, is not that fruity. So Yeah. So I agree with Deborah. There's more acidity in this wine. The acidity is really fresh. It's making my mouth salivate. There's more body. So, you know, definitely a full body wine. There's more alcohol and also more tannins. So whereas in the Creux Hermitage, the tannins were kind of medium and very fine. In this case, the tannins is more like medium plus and maybe, you know, a little more grapey, right? And then, yes, Carr says it's meaty on the palate, and it is. You know, there is this good combination of fruit and then the savory, meaty character. So William says it's very viscous. Yes, definitely. If you have that high alcohol, definitely you have all this glycerol content in the wine. And Carl says the alcohol is a little aggressive. So yes, the alcohol is 15%, which in Barossa is common. Okay. So yeah, it's kind of, you know, when I smell the wine, kind of smells like port for a little bit, right? So, and then you understand what the wine is. Okay. It is really the style of the wine. There are some people, you know, making 14.5% in Barossa, but the style is that rich, full body, a lot of fruits, heavy, very heavy on the palate. Okay. But, you know, surprisingly, this wine, it's balanced in terms of the oak. So the oak is not, you know, aggressively sitting on top of the fruit. It is, you know, the oak is there, just some toast, some smokiness, giving complexity. But the wine is really, you know, what carries it is the amount of fruit. And yes, we have red fruits, we have black fruits and blue fruits. So a little bit of everything. Yeah. Okay. So really interestingly, you know, I have the tax sheet for this wine. And so first of all, you know, they are harvesting grapes from 7 subregions in Barossa. So I think that is why we are seeing, you know, all this different fruit profile. And then the harvest was from March 4th to April 9th, 2019. So first we are in the Southern Hemisphere. So the harvest is different, right? But, you know, what was very impressive to me is that it took them 35 days to harvest these grapes. So what that means is not that they're slow or, you know, they were trying to do something. So what does that mean is that they're harvesting at different ripeness levels. Okay. So that is why, yes, we have red fruits like strawberries, black fruits like blackberries and cherries, and then blue fruits. Because of that, they were using the time to harvest different grapes. Yeah, good barbecue wine. I agree. I think it is as well. You know, we can take even the sweetness of so ribs. So yeah, I agree. It needs, you know, one of the things that we talk about when we talk about food and wine pairing is that keep them at the same level. So if the food is highly flavored, the wine has to be highly flavored as well. Otherwise, the wine will disappear. So yes, baby back ribs, barbecue sauce. Yes, that'll be a great wine for it. Okay. Let me see what else they say in here about this wine. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, that's what they say. So 35 days for harvesting and so on. So chili, I agree, can be a great pairing. Indian foods, I'm not sure. The problem with Indian food or any very spicy food is then, you know, the alcohol level feels even higher. So every time you have spicy food, the alcohol might seem even higher. So in here we have 15% alcohol. You know, people said it was a little bit aggressive. So maybe, you know, unless it is Indian food, kind of tuned down. Yes, I agree. So I wanted you to go back and taste the Crozes Hermitage now, because we thought the Crozes Hermitage was so fruity, but now I want you to feel the difference and the shock, you know, coming back and seeing if the Crozes Hermitage is really as fruity as we thought, or it is really a more savory old world style. Oh, wow. Okay. So this is always such a great exercise. And that is why, you know, comparing and contrasting is the best way to understand and learn wines. So now when you go back to the Crozes Hermitage, on the palate is basically no fruits. It's all, you know, a lot of spicy notes, is very savory, black pepper, kind of, you know, yeah, the granite-like stony minerality, but very savory palate. So yes, you know, everything in life is relative. It depends, you know, what is the comparison. So we were drinking water and coffee all day. You came to it, you thought it was super fruity, and then you have the Barossa, which is the fruit bomb. And then, you know, now you have means to compare the two wines, right? So, and then, yeah, I thought it was, you know, really interesting comparison. So, and, you know, with this, I just want to say that I think those two wines really represent the terroir, right? So not only the climate, the grapes, the, you know, where it is, the vineyards, but also the winemaking and the style that the region is known for. So yes, the Silene Crozes Hermitage 2019, warm vintage, but still very savory in comparison to a Barossa Shiraz that has a hot climate and, you know, is well known for producing wines that are fruitier, and, you know, more powerful, richer in style. Okay. Yeah. Do you have any comments about the wines or anything? Because then I want to go back to, you know, the first slide, or one of the first slides in here. So let me go back. All right, so, oh, I'm happy to hear, Carl. He's saying that Syrah Shiraz is probably his favorite black grape. I'm so happy to hear. Okay, yeah. So because this is, you know, the last session, I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss, you know, because when I set up this webinar, it was really a question. Terroir matters. So it was, you know, question mark. It was a question. And what I was trying to prove in here is that, yes, there is a lot of factors around it, right? You cannot, you know, analyze just one thing because it depends on multiple things, from the vineyard to the winery, right? But what I think we could prove during this series is that the wines were very different, and they showed exactly what they were supposed to show, right? And even though the old world gets, you know, warmer and warmer vintages, the style is still very savory and dry, right? And, you know, in this case of the Silene, 14.5% alcohol, so it doesn't go very much into, you know, what I say in here, but still the style is very savory. Whereas in the old world, in the new world, sorry, like California, South America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, you have these wines that are just exuberant, right? So the fruit is exuberant, and then they are really plush and soft with higher alcohol. So I think overall, you know, all the wines showed exactly what they had to show, and I was happy for that. But you know, always we have to keep the comparison for us to really understand what we mean about savory, right? In the case of this Crozes Hermitage, when it is so fruity or appears to be so fruity, okay? So we have a question in here, very interesting one. So are there any old world winemakers moving toward a new world style in anticipation of warmer climate? Absolutely, yes, very good question. So what happened in the last few years, so 2003 was a very hot year in Europe. So people were not prepared for it. And in fact, a lot of people died because of the heat, and winemakers were not prepared, and the vines were not prepared for it, okay? Now, fast forward, you know, 16 years, 17 years later, 2019, 2020, pretty hot vintage in some parts of Europe, but now the vines have learned to deal with the heat and the stress as well, and winemakers as well, okay? So Europe still, you know, irrigation is not allowed. It is allowed for young vines only, you know, baby vines when you're planting them, and allowed in some regions if needed when requested. So it is a very important process. But they are still all learning how to manage this. And of course, you know, the thing is that everybody nowadays learn from each other, right? Because winemakers, they go and do the harvests in the New World and then come back to Europe. So they learn how to make, you know, fruity styles of wine, or fruit forward, or, you know, more pleasurable, more softer styles of wine. So there is a good interchange between winemakers, and that is why it's getting harder and harder to, you know, tell two wines apart, especially in blind tastings. But still, you know, the character is in here, and I think this wines just, you know, today showed that the character, the savoriness of the Crozes Hermitage is still here, despite all the alcohol and all the fruit for the hot vintage, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, let me go back to the slide and the last slide. So yeah, so I think terroir do matter, right? We saw that the wines are very good, both, but totally different styles. And yeah, you know, let's see if we have a few more questions. Yeah, and so we can, you know, do this all over again. Okay, so a flip side to that question, any up and coming wine regions that might get more viable due to climate change? Very good question. Absolutely. So first of all, you know, we see England, right? So England is doing some amazing sparkling wines, champagne quality, because of that. So climate is getting warmer. We see Canada not only doing ice wine, but now you get Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Pinot Noir, Riesling, Chardonnay, everything from Canada. And then, you know, within France, for instance, I saw plantings of Syrah in Beaujolais. So, you know, Beaujolais is really well known for Gamay, but I saw plantings of Syrah. It is still experimental plantings, you know, it is not allowed, but they are doing that. And then Bordeaux has allowed 10% of plantings from grapes like Touriga Nacional, Albarino, Marcelin, and grapes that can withstand heat and drought. So yes, I think, you know, every wine region is preparing for it. And, you know, trying to plant in cooler sites we hear a lot about, south exposure or southeast exposure. There are people planting in northern exposure now, if you want to do kind of a lighter styles of wine. That is happening in Piemonte, that is happening in Alsace. So yeah, I think people are experimenting much more and kind of, learning to deal with it, because it is here to stay. So, we'll just have to get better with it. Yeah. All right. So yes, and what do you guys think? Terroir matters or it doesn't matter? Oh, the two wines smell so delicious. Yeah, so Solange says it matters. William says we. Deborah, absolutely. Carr says it definitely matters. So yes, exactly. So it definitely matters. And, that is why wine is so fantastic, because we can taste, the same grape, very similar climates, but, totally different styles. So yes. Karen says, thank you so much. I love this course. No, thank you all. It has been, also a pleasure for me researching all of this and, choosing the wines. And for me, I choose the wines and I said, okay, I think, I can expect this, but it is until we taste that we can really tell if the wine is going to show as we wished. So, I'm glad all the wines showed really well. And yes, and I will continue with my studies. So like I said, I want to do a Bordeaux webinar, but I thought, how fun it will be over the summer to do a sparkling wine, right? And talk about, different methods for sparkling wines. Pet nat is something that is very in fashion and in trend right now. At the store, we have 3, for instance, and I was never a fan, but pet nat can be really refreshing. So I thought about that, how fun it will be to have a pet nat against, a Prosecco against a champagne or a traditional method, to show the 3 different types. That will have to be on a Friday, so you can keep the wines open and drink over the weekend, right? But yeah, there's so much more to talk, and yeah. All right, so thank you all so very much. And yes, the recording is available. So, everything is on the Dropbox. So all the PDFs for the presentation and everything. So yes, if you do not remember or did not get the Dropbox links, let me know, but I did send to everyone. All of you can access that, okay? Yeah, thank you, Carl. Thank you so much. And thank you, Deborah, as well. Thank you, Solange. Yes, thank you, William. A pleasure. And I hope to see you all very, very soon in person or at the next webinar. Who knows? All right. So enjoy the wines and cheers. All right. Thank you, guys. All right. Thanks. Bye.